Any questions after lunch? Maybe you thought something was confusing or something? No? No? Is it clear? Map, filter. No questions about that? First, who didn't finish the exercise? You've all finished it? Cool. Nice. There is one other method. It's we were just like discussing it now. It's like it's not really complicated, but it's a bit weird. It's called reduce. I don't know if you've heard about it before. So you can say array.reduce. It is a bit weird, honestly. It works in a weird way, but I will just try to show it to you for the sake of like you can just go home and try to play with it or go, but it's not something required. But you will use it a lot when you will start working, or for any useful JavaScript. It's really useful. So try to understand it, but otherwise no pressure. Just try to because I think even these methods is already sort of enough. So I will try and oh. So let's say I want to add, like I have an array with numbers, I want to add all the numbers together. You can do it with a for loop. It's like simple. Just say you can have sum, and inside the for loop, you just like add to the sum. Kind of easy. But as we said, there is methods specialized in these kind of like things. There's also another method called reduce. Let's use reduce for that. Let's use reduce for this specific example, but after that try to generalize it. The same way we did with map and filter. We had them like really special, doing something special, but after that we understood that it's something general. We just used it for that specific thing, but it's more general. So let's say we have array. So I will say array dot reduce. Reduce takes 2 parameters instead of the others like take 1. The first one is a function. These all they take functions. So let's say function and it takes another parameter called the accumulator. And essentially what reduce does is you will give it one variable. You will start with it. So you will start initially with a variable. Let's say you start with a 0. So 0 is your accumulator. And on every like each iteration you add to that 0 to make do the sum. Does it make sense? So you always start with an accumulator. You can be an array, it can be anything. But let's start with 0 now. And this function will receive 2 things. It will receive the accumulator, which is this one. So this one will be received here. And it will receive the item inside the array. So let's say item. Make sense? So I will say console.log accumulator item. And I will say return accumulator plus what? Plus item. Because I want to add the item, which is 2 and 5 and 3 to the accumulator. This will return something. Const result. It will return what you return here. So accumulator start with 0. You run the function. You say return accumulator plus item. So accumulator is 0 in the initially. And the code is in the chat. You don't need to. I already posted it in the chat. So we start with 2. So we say accumulator plus 2. That will give us 0 plus 2, which is 2. It will run the function again for 5. But the next time it runs the function for 5, accumulator will not be 0. It will be the last 2. And we keep building on the top of that. Does it make sense? So result here, it will be what? It will be just a number, that is the sum. So if we say this, So it's 0, 2. So let's do it in or just console.log. Kind of that, because you are building, it's recursive. It's built on the previous result, and the previous result is built on the previous result. So we have accumulator. Ignore what I'm adding now, just for explaining. So first iteration is accumulator 0 and item 2. Why it's 0? Because we put 0 here. If we put 5, it will start with a 5. So say 0. 0 and item is 2, because the array has 2. It's the first item. What we will return is accumulator plus item. So we say accumulator plus item, it will be 2. The next time, second iteration, which is the first one. Second iteration, it will be 2. Why accumulator is 2? Because I returned, so it always returns the last return. It's 2. 2 plus 5, 7. Accumulator is what? Is 7. Plus 3, 10. And result is what? Is 10. We can console log. And it's 10. Make sense? Let's just like explain it another time. So we said we have array, it's 2 and 5 and 3. Make sense? We say array dot reduce. We give it a function. I would just say a function like this. And the second parameter, which is 0, which is 0 in our case. We started with 0, we can start with any number. Okay? And this will take accumulator and let's say v, current value. So what will happen? Let's create a table of invocation here. So the first time we run accumulator and v. The first time you run it, accumulator is 0. And value is what? 2. We will say return accumulator plus, let's say, value times 2. Just make it a bit complex. So we say value times 2, 4, plus accumulator. What's the value of accumulator? It's 0. So we return 0. Okay? Forget about that. We return here. We return 4. Okay? We need to run the function again because reduce runs over all the items. We run it for this, so we were here now. Now we will go this to this one. 5. What's the value of accumulator? 4. It's the last return. 4. So it's what? It's 4. What's my current value? 5. 4 plus 5? 5 times 2. It's 10. Plus 4, it's 14. So the next return is 14. I run it again for 3. Accumulator is what? 14. And my value is what? 3. 3 times 2, 6. 6 plus 14. And we are done. So the last return, it will be const rs equal. The last return would be what's written in this variable, which is 20. So rs is 20. Does it make sense? It's a bit weird.
Yeah.
Why it's like working like this and stuff.
And accumulator is fixed, right? You can't.
It's not
choose
fixed,
another-
but it depends. Like
No,
you
I mean-
start with a fixed number.
No, I mean, in the function, like you can't have another parameter instead of accumulator. Reduce works with accumulator.
Yeah, it takes accumulator as the first one, and the value as the second parameter. It takes some other things, but we are not interested. It takes also the index, but we are not interested in that. But accumulator and value. This is fixed. If you use reduce, the first one is what? Is the accumulator.
And what is the usage of this?
The usage of it if you want to do something custom that filter or map doesn't do. So let's say you have an array and you want to transform it into an object. Or you have an object and you want to transform it into an array.
The smaller ones.
Depends, but reduce is like really good for anything that map and filter doesn't fit into. So you can see you are building the value. For example, here we did the sum. Can I do the sum with a map? That would be a bit weird because map returns an array. So the sum of arrays, I cannot do that. Can I do the sum with a filter?
No.
Not really. I cannot filter. So reduce is a really good candidate for that. So whenever you want to do a custom computation, a custom thing that filter and map doesn't fit into, you can reach for a for loop or you can also use reduce.
And even if you don't define accumulator as a zero, it is zero by default.
It's not zero by default, it's the first parameter by default.
It's 10.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if you don't define this, it will start with accumulator. Let's check that. That's a good catch actually. So let's say we don't define zero here.
That's sitting in the wrong class.
Yes. Yeah, you can see everything is packed. We are like here. So yeah, so you can see now instead of having 3 iterations, we have only 2. Why? Because the first iteration it doesn't count anymore because we don't have an accumulator. So what we return in the beginning, it will be like the first item. So now the accumulator starts with 2. Does it make sense? The accumulator starts with 2 directly. But usually it's a good idea to supply an accumulator, so it becomes clear.
Yeah, and when the array will be empty, we will not get the
You
error,
will-
but we will have a 0.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's good to have it.
Yeah. Does it make sense? This is of course like a simple example, but if I want to do like multiplication, I will do accumulator times item. Does this work? There is something wrong here.
It's 0, then every time it.
Everything is 0 now.
Yeah.
Because 0 times 0 times 0. So if you have billions of numbers, you only need 1 0 and it will make everything 0. It's like 0 can make everything impossible. So we start with a 1. It's the neutral element. So the neutral element is 1 for the multiplication. For the addition, the neutral element is 0. Then we have 30. Does it make sense?
This one also can be done with for each.
But you need to maintain a variable outside and add to that.
Yeah, but I mean,
Everything can be. You
can be
can.
done
with
yeah,
anything.
Yeah.
You can do anything with anything. But it's just like we're trying to like really get a really simple piece of code. We're trying to like achieve simplicity. Because when someone reads a filter, he will be like, of course he's filtering. But if he reads a for loop, he needs to actually go through your code. It's like, what are you doing with your code? Oh, are you pushing? Oh, so it's a result. Oh, he's pushing only the element with this function. Okay, so it's a filter. It's like, he will spend 1 minute or like 50 seconds just reasoning about your code. And not understanding code is not an issue that you have. It's the issue of everybody. Like me, people with like 700 years of experience. Code is like, it's difficult to understand code sometimes. So you should achieve like simplicity with like these kind of methods. If reduce is too complex for something, use a for loop. So you know better. Usually I don't really care the first time I write code, but just like try to kind of make it like readable, iteration after iteration. Let's do sort of a more. Let's transform. Let's transform this. So we have the mentors, and it's an object. Sorry, it's an array of objects. We want to transform it into an object with the names as like indices instead of the. Oh, I forgot to write the. So we have M mentors. It's an array of objects, and each object has a name, and some other fields. Okay? Make sense? This is the array of mentors. It's an array of objects. Each object has a name and some other fields, like subject, years of experience. I'm interested into shaping this sort of like in a format of an object. So instead of having an array like this, I will have an object with the name. So for example, the name here is like Y. I will have a Y here, and the other fields. And here I will have, for example, Yunus, and the object. I will have Abed and the list.
This should have just one value.
What do you mean?
What, one value or more than one?
No, it's more. It's like Y. It's like all the mentors. So instead of having like an array, we will shape it. So if we have a name here, it's equal Y. We will put a Y here. Does it make sense? So we'll convert this. How we will do it? Reduce comes really handy here. So the way I will do it, I will just say my mentors dot reduce. It's a function. It takes accumulator and let's say the M mentor and say mentors here. Mentors. Mentors. Okay, mentors, and here it's an M. We open here. Usually we give it 0 here because you are interested in a sum. We were doing the sum of numbers. But now I want to create an object out of an array. So I'm converting an array into objects. Does it make sense? So always ask yourself when you use a reduce, what's the result of my operation? So the result of our operation over there was a number. So I started with 0. What's the result of my operation here? It's an object. I will form an object. So I start with what?
Object.
An empty object. This is the trick when using reduce. Make sense? Now this one, the first time, it's what? It's an empty object. Remember, this, the first time. And I have the mentor. So what I would say is like, I always return the accumulator. I would say return accumulator. But accumulator is empty, so it will keep only returning empty object, and it will end with an empty object. What I will do here, I will say accumulator of, so I will use an array brackets, and dot name equal M, and I will return accumulation. So what's happening here? This is, so let's create a table here. So accumulator and M. So the first time it's an empty object, and M is what? It's this mentor. So I will just like refer to it to one M, just like the first mentor. What I'm gonna do with it? What's the return here? So and let's say here it's the return. The return is what?
object.
I will put the, so I will get the name. So I will create a new, so the object, it was empty, but now we have a name. So let's say this name is y. And what's the value of it? It's the whole object like this. So we say M1. Say M1. Make sense? So now the return will be here. So here we have M1. We have Y. Sorry. We have an object with Y and M1. And M1 is just this object, or M0. You can go with that. What's the second one? It's M2. And I do the same. I have only the Y M1, and I put M.name. So this one, let's say its name was like C. So I put C and M2. And we copy it here, and we do the same for all of them.
Like you have the name, okay, you get that from M name,
Yeah.
and then you still get the whole object again, including the M.
Yes. So what I'm trying to form is that I will have something like this at the end. So I have an empty object. The first time I will say, so let's say this is like a Y, just like a person with the name Y, and the whole object here. And the second time I will have C with the fields, say D with the fields. This is what I'm trying to form. So on each iteration, I insert a new key in the object. We'll see it in practice. This is, of course, just some pseudo code. Make sense?
There will be redundant information that the name will be in the object, even though
So let's just say const. So I'll just name it mentors as object. Okay, I would say mentors dot reduce. It takes a function. And what we said in the beginning? 0, it's for if you are trying to like sum up numbers. But now what's the result of my operation? It's an object. So I start with an empty object. Before I started with the 0 because I wanted to add to the 0. Now I start with an object so I can add to the object. Make sense? So now it's accumulator and mentor. One mentor, not mentors. It's one mentor. So each time it will be one of the mentors. And if I will do the same here, I'll just say return undefined, which is returned by default. Yeah, of course. Let's comment this code. Yeah, now it's clear. So the first time, I have accumulator empty, and I have the first mentor.
Can you zoom out?
Yeah, sure. The first time I have accumulator empty, and I have the mentor. Okay? The second time, accumulator is undefined. Why? Because we have returned undefined. But still, mentor is the second mentor. And the same for the third, the same for the fourth, the same for the fifth, the same for the sixth. Because we are returning undefined all the time. Does this make sense? So now I'm only printing the mentor. I'm not doing anything to the object. And I kind of lost the object because I'm returning undefined. So what I'm gonna do here is say accumulator of mentor.name equal mentor. And I will say return accumulator. Let's see what this will yield. So we have I will do something now, just I will do something. You're not concerned with this. It's just it's the same code. It's just like it doesn't change. So you can see here, for the first time, we've added yeah, because that's so you can see the first time it's an empty object, and we have the mentor. Okay, this is the normal behavior. The second time, I have added accumulator. I've added this mentor to the accumulator. Remember, accumulator of mentor.name equal I hate when I keep like. So the second iteration, we stopped at the second iteration. Now I've added this name. You can see that this mentor was added to the accumulator. Make sense? And now this mentor will be added to the accumulator in this one because we return it here. And you can see we are building up all the mentors. Now we have 3 mentors. Now we will have 4 mentors in the accumulator. And now we will have 5 mentors in the accumulator. So on each iteration, we are adding a mentor to the object. Does this make sense?
Maybe not so next question, but when we have 2 words as the key in the object, like the formatting is just goes automatic to this, right? Because
First, just think that I'm doing this. Ignore this line. It's the same as this line. So this is what I'm doing. This line was just to do something to that, just so I can change it. But this is the idea.
no, I noticed that, but like I remember from the lesson where we learned objects, if we need to have 2 words for the key, we need to write it specially, so there's the empty space in between, or there's not.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
And here we get the name. Which
Yeah,
is
because we are using dynamic naming here.
Yeah, so that doesn't cause any problem because it takes its own.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we are using string, so it doesn't matter how this string is formatted. Does this make sense a bit? Of course, I told you like reduce is a bit complex, but just to get an idea, it's powerful. You can shape things, change things without really like reaching for a full loop. And I really encourage you to go home, take a look at it, and things. You're not like having anything such this in the homework, so it is just optional.
I think it's,
We just like chatted about like having it. And
it is in homework, I guess, for this week.
But I think
for option, only optional?
it's optional, yeah, but that's the idea.
Okay.
So please, like, you will really need it for the future. So just go and take a look at it home. Just go to MDN or something. Make sense? So I will copy the new code. Let's go back to filter and map and stuff. So now let's discuss something which is called an arrow function. So arrow functions are just like normal functions, but they are just like well, there is some differences, but it's not really for us to know now. It's like out of scope. when you will go to the Node or React class, the finals, you will like get it in details. What's the difference between arrow functions and normal functions? But let's just like discuss what's an arrow function. So usually you write functions. So if I would say const f1 is function, you do it this way, and you say console.log hello f1. Simple. Simple. So an arrow function is like new addition to JavaScript. It's not new anymore. It's like for 5 years or something. It was new. We kept saying it's new, but it's not new anymore. Let's say f2. It's equal to. You make the so you omit the function. You just make parentheses. And you do this. And sorry for this font, but it's just like this. But my font is just collapsing them. Make sense? Just like it's like equal with the greater than symbol, but just. And you can do the same thing here.
What are we doing that exactly that thing?
What?
What's that thing exactly doing?
It's
Way of writing the same.
it's equal and greater than operator, and it's just like a smaller version of this function. So this is the new way you can write a function. So if you have here arg1, arg2, or let's say you have a, b, you can have a, b here. Say hello f1 or f2, a plus b. Make sense?
Yeah.
So this is just, it's the same as a function. It's just shorter, maybe. Maybe you don't find it. Some people hate it, some people likes it. Up to you. As for this stage, there's no difference, but there is a difference technically. There is a huge difference, but you will not really notice it now. It's like when you go for the last class. So you can use whatever version you like.
Does it work regardless if you do not write const f2 equal? I mean, if you
Yeah.
commit
So
it,
let's say I have. Are you all familiar with the set timeout?
Yeah.
All?
No.
All? No. Yes or no?
No.
Set timeout that you give it 3 seconds or something, and it will run something. No. Okay. Let's say we have our array.
Mm.
Let's say for each. Okay.
Mm.
I'll just comment this code. Just move this one here. Let's say array dot for each. You can write function like this, and you say value, and you can console log value 2, 5, and 3. Simple. You can transform this into an arrow function by deleting this and putting this here. Does it make sense? For all of you? So it's as for your stage, it's mainly shorter. You can do something even like better. If you have only, so here you have 2 parameters. Okay? You need parentheses. If you have only one, you can actually just do like this. If you have only one argument, you can just go with this.
And also we can delete the curly braces if
Yeah,
we have only one
yeah.
thing to do.
Take one step by step. Step by step.
It will be so short.
Make sense? So if you have one parameter or argument, just you can omit the parentheses. But if you have value and value 1, you cannot. You need to do that. Got that? Simple? Remember that. This does, because like when you are practicing arrow functions, you get confused why sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Just keep these rules in mind. That you can just start with just using parentheses all the time. When you get like comfortable with it, you can remove them. Another thing, if for example here you have like const result equal a plus b. and you say console.log result. And we have A plus B. Make sense? We have 2 lines here. We have 2 lines. But we can also just do this. We can just do that. It's easier. If you have only 1 line in an arrow function, remember, if you have only 1 line, not 2 lines, because some people, they will have 6 lines, like, can I make it shorter? No. If you have 1 line, only 1 line, you can omit these. And it will be like this. So you can just stick a console.log. And this is becoming really shorter compared to array.forEach and a function a b console.log a plus b. You can see the difference. With this, we need the parentheses, we need the function, we need the curly braces. A third thing, if you want to return something, so let's forget about these. Our a plus b, let's make it shorter by deleting everything, like this. That's really cool, really short, beautiful, looks like a lambda.
The others and
What?
can you specify the other version so you can compare?
Well, you can still write it yourself. Like, I'm not writing like 700 lines of code. Just write a normal function. Really, programming is about repetition. When you repeat a lot, it will just make a lot of sense. So it's shorter like this. Make sense? So instead of doing, let's say I want to return here. So I would say return a plus b. And here I need to say return a plus b. Well, it doesn't work. Because if you have only 1 line, and you are not using curly braces because it's 1 line, there is a return by default. So if you call f2 with 5 and 7, it will return it by default. So it's kind of converting this return a plus b into this. So this and this, they are the same. So remember, when you have only 1 expression and you omit the curly braces, there is an auto return. So it will return by default. Here, if you don't return anything, it will return undefined. There will be no return. But here, no. Even if there is no return, it will return this by default. It will return only the 1 expression, because you can only write it like this if you have 1 expression. Does it make sense? Yes. Usually you write return like this to return something from the function. If you don't put any return, it will not return anything. It will be undefined. So a plus b, it's gone. But in this smaller version, because we have only 1 line, or we have only 1 expression, we can delete these. And when you delete them, it will be returned by default. So this is returned, a plus b. So I don't need to do this. It's not even valid. It's returned by default. So calling f2 with 5, 45, and 5. Oh yeah. Let's say f3, f3. Oh, I need to console.log, sorry. We have 50, even though we didn't return anything, because it's an auto return. Does it make sense? No questions? No, this is a row functions. It's just there is, as I said, like some functional part of it, but it's not important in our stage. So your exercise will be to change the one that you did before from normal functions, or they call it fat functions, from fat functions into arrow functions or slim functions. Make sense? And try to see if you can actually make it an auto return, maybe.
And there are always anonymous.
Yes, arrow functions are anonymous. Yes.
The things that we remember.
Yes, that thing, just try to change it to an arrow function. And try to experiment with the auto return if you can do it, if you can't. The thing that you already did before, the exercise that you did before.
How do you call this?
What?
How do you call it?
Arrow function. Yeah, arrow function. It's an arrow. I was about to say that some people already do it. Exactly. Make it fat, ugly. Yeah.
You're very comfortable with that one. So maybe now that's similar.
The website, they will hire the website and send you. You should do it.
But really, there is a translator.
There is.
Probably.
There is. If in the world of JavaScript, everything exists. Every unicorn, everything exists. People have built libraries for everything.
So we cannot come with something new.
It's difficult to do it all of JavaScript. You can just go and contribute to the existing things on GitHub. So.
But you said that for each returns nothing. But actually, it returns something because it manipulates the mentors. Yeah.
All is the object.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So immutable means that
Yeah, but-
immutable means that
Yeah, the difference is we actually talk about
you
it,
just
it's tricky
customize
for you,
yourself.
because the array
What
itself
No more- no
is
more.
immutable. The
What
array
what
the
do you
editor,
copied over,
yeah,
and will
I'm
change
every day
the
like trying to
objects
find like
inside.
extensions and
The
reading.
array
like this.
contains
And
this,
when you
this array here,
you
for instance, it will
comment out
contain
the
a reference to the
studies,
object. So
Oh,
when
yeah,
you create a new
because
array, the
it
reference
does
to the
by
object is the same.
Mm.
So when you change it like this,
If you comment
say
this,
item, your experience plus one,
If you
it
comment this
changes
line,
the object inside the array, and that is the array.
Yeah, so I want.
So the arrays are different, but the objects that are inside the array change.
So you're not changing the structure, but you're changing something inside
You're
the.
changing the object itself. So you're
Change
changing this
here
one here,
is,
for instance. When you say
this line
plus
is
one
the
here,
same.
then the other
I mean
both
the
arrays
character.
have a
Oh, the
pointer to
characters,
that
yeah.
object, and they point to the same.
You mean like
object.
you mean like these
So
characters?
it's mutable.
So
what?
Okay, yeah. So
No,
when we say
like,
immutable or immutable means that you're not adding new.
Like-
Which line?
New
Like
object,
const.
You're not
Yeah.
changing the
You know,
array
this
itself,
const,
but
yeah.
when
Yeah.
you
You
when
can
you use
change the object.
What you
inside.
comment
Yeah.
out
and
is
if
it's
you
not
use numbers, for instance, it
the
would
same,
it's numbers and simple data structures.
what do you put it?
Simple data
Same
structures.
color or what?
So
No,
numbers
no,
would not
the
act
style.
this way, but objects
The,
are not.
the letter is not the same.
It is.
They will-
This one
if
is
you
the same.
change-
It's almost the
if you
same.
just change the reference
I mean-
change something inside the object in
you
one
wait-
area,
wait.
different area.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. I got you. I got you. Yeah, because
So
I'm.
you need
It's just a custom
instead
font.
of this
I can show you.
Array of numbers.
So this is VS Code,
Yeah.
and you will just install the extensions.
Yeah,
make
yeah.
it
Same, but you
different.
wouldn't mutate it like you do here. You mutate it because you change something inside the object with the mutation. I can show you.
I use something called dark mono.
just so you understand.
Dank mono, not dark mono. Dank
For
mono.
each, it does.
This is the
And
font
then
that
for
does
this
that.
one, for instance, where you map
It's
it,
called dank mono. It's a
So
font.
in the setting
So
you
if
can
you
do it
didn't want
yourself.
to
Yeah.
change it,
Ah, okay.
You just change the font.
Yeah, okay.
If I will, for example, remove this.
you do this.
No, it's.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah.
It is not the
You
same.
would, instead of
You can see.
Yeah,
just
no,
change- now
no,
you
yeah,
just say
it's-
mentor.
But if I will change this back,
plus one, so you
I
just
have this
change
side
inside
inside.
the object.
It's just a
That's why you
font.
change in all the other areas as well.
Yes.
You could have returned it like this. I don't
If I
expect
go
you
to
to.
VS Code and I go to this last one, I
These outside
go
this.
to the extension. If you go here, and you can search here, but we don't know what
Yeah, yeah.
that's what so about Google with VS Code.
What will change
So this means this is outside what you're gonna learn this in called the spread operator. So this will copy the object into a new object, and then you would add one more.
To the new.
So this one would return a new object instead of
So we
returning
change. We don't change the function, so we call it like.
instead like this, then it would be both the array and the object inside the array.
Because we don't know.
But we don't know what this
Option.
With this and this,
It's right like this and it's right like this.
it mutates because the object contains references and points to
If there's many, you need
points to the object, and those references, even though
Even
So
though
we-
the values
it's a new area, but they point to the same object. So when you change the object itself, they both point to the same one. So it's changed.
Got it. More or less, yeah.
If you want to read about it, there is something called passing by reference and passing by value. Just remember passing by reference and passing by value.
And
Google it.
compare this two and
Yeah, there's passing by reference and passing by value. Array is a reference, so
okay.
just read it. Say JavaScript passing by reference and value.
Yeah, thank you. I will know that for myself.
Can we say in the arrow function, the parameters is defined before the arrow function? And, I mean, in the traditional function,
In the what?
in
Iteration?
traditional function way, in the traditional way, we define the parameters.
Can you just say it again? A bit higher.
Yeah. In a traditional way, we define a function first, and parameters.
Guys, bit lower. Bit lower, guys. Bit lower. No, you can talk. Just a bit lower.
In a traditional way, we define a function first, and parameter comes after.
Yeah.
But in arrow function, parameter comes first, and arrow function after.
This
Yes.
So
corresponds
placement
to
also
features.
matters.
Or
Yes. So you have like the parameters and after that the arrow.
These parameters
So
are-
before it, no. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true.
because after math.
So the function is like the
Yeah.
flip of the arrow.
Yeah, exactly.
This part after before f. Yeah, yes. You should have that part. Now we have this parenthesis that keeps all the things that should go into math. So it's a parenthesis that, and then we have this this array, which we want to do this on mental. Mental should go through this function. And because we have just one operation here, this one
No, but this is not
also return because it is
A row function doesn't change the code.
now
It's just a replacement
should
function.
work,
You know what I mean? It's like if you have a cup and I hold it, you hold it. We're just holding the cup. That doesn't change the cup itself. So a row functions only change the look of your code. They don't change your code.
We
They
remove this
change the look.
function, and since we have
Like
just
using
one
const or let.
input, we can remove this parenthesis. And since we have just one command, we can remove this, what is the name, this thing, permit, and then also we can remove return, so it becomes such a narrow,
That's one of the things that I don't like about functions, that they don't You can do it with
always,
Exactly. So I always like use a row function if I'm passing a function. But like for normal functions that I define outside, for example, filter, the one that I define outside, that I build myself. That one I will not use in the row function. But the one passing functions, the row functions are better because they are short. So you can just pass short to a map of a filter. But if you're working your own functions from outside, just do this. Exactly, just right. Yeah. You can do that up to this side. Some people
Outside.
Like I said,
this is one side. I don't know when you will know. You will understand
like you
why.
have 1 for array, yes?
But
So I think
it'll
it's like
be
1
easy.
and 2. And
No,
moving
never.
it even
As long as you know
like
what
default source by the value like smaller
the
one.
companies need for
So you have
they
3,
don't know.
6, 1. And you want to have 1, 3, 6.
And it's really yeah, exactly. You should know. And whenever
Extending or descending or
you're like before you say
you have two parameters, AB, and AB is the front and back.
because we have
So
mental
when you have 3,
and we
6,
have
1
mentors.
is 3, 6, and it's comparing 3 and 6. What is bigger or what is smaller, and putting it on order, and then it's comparing.
The problem is that
Like
what
6
the
and 1.
argument that
What
you
is
are passing,
bigger is 6, it's go.
it's mentor and this is mentors. These two names, this one has an extra S.
Smaller, I think it's working like this.
We need to just Here is the call.
And
So
you
it's
are
also
working
maybe
on your
not-
check.
I just moved
Number
with,
two.
from Iceland and it was working.
Yeah.
But I did not get the concept.
In
How
this
it is
way,
actually
the
solved.
parameter comes
And
first.
So
what did you want
you,
to
you,
sort the numbers or letters?
before you had this as an argument, so the argument stays the same.
It stays the
Where we
same,
have to
yeah.
sort the array, right?
It is.
And when we have to place everything.
You said that it refer by value and refer by.
Passing by reference and passing by value.
Thank you.
So it's two different things. And just write JavaScript next to
But
it.
it is like this.
Because there's it's
In
what we are learning today, it's for all programming languages. They are all using this to specify passing by value or reference Java.
Thank you.
like comparing two values each next to each other, and even leave it like this or moving it. I think like this. Maybe
I was confused with the minus.
minus,
Can we
maybe.
give arrow function a name?
It's
No.
Yeah,
Unless you
it's
use
so
a
like
variable
not making
to hold it.
Okay. And if
Let me
something
check one
goes
thing.
wrong, how we will know that they this is the case.
Yeah, you need to use a name. You need to use like for example const f1 equal 0 function.
So const name would be the function name.
All modern like JavaScript engines they do that.
Okay. Got it.
But technically it doesn't have it. So over the const name it should not. It's just like some people decided that it's a good idea to have it. So if yeah, this is why I usually like use raw functions if it's like for small computation. But for like for like full-fledged function, I'll probably use functions, file functions.
Got it.
Yes, there's someone behind you. The sort. It's not really because there's so many methods that I don't want to get into. But probably you should like you try to read about it. But the idea about the sort method is that so sort takes a function, and that function takes two parameters, a and b. Can we do it after the class? Just on the whiteboard. I cannot explain stuff on whiteboard. I'm sorry. So let's do it with whiteboard. You can also come now. Sacred numbers. If you say red,
So it hasn't added the
what
one.
sort? Get the function. Function takes, let's say a and b. It takes two parameters. Same
Can I
number.
join you because we were speaking with a sort also, so
Okay.
I
So
like.
it takes a and b. And you a and b, it's this. A it's this and b it's this. After that, a it's this and b it's this.
Okay, this is also good.
Make sense? So it will change in between. Yeah, but let me just finish and after that we can backtrack. So if you say return -1 means b, so it will create a new array, b will be before a. If you return 1, a will be after b. Yeah, it's thing. So the way so let's say
And if it's the same, return 0?
yeah. So if you say you return a minus b, if we try if you can just say that whiteboard, it's fine. So,
We don't say JavaScript is doing under what function is running on the compares and it's not then it's compared.
already have.
If just if you take a look here,
But we had the break point.
so it takes A and B. If you so usually you return I minus B, or you return B minus I. Let's say we return A minus B. That will give us 235. It will sort it instead of 253. Why? Because it will take 2 and 5. So 2 will be A and 5 will be B. And it will say 2 minus 5.
Minus 3.
It's minus 3, so it's a minus number. So A comes before B. And after that it will pick 5 and 3. 5 minus 3. 2. So B comes before A. So you return A minus B. If it's negative, A will be before B. If it's positive, B will be before A.
I think for us it's just difficult to understand that not all the code is written really there, but the engine JavaScript knows what to do with sort, like.
Because it's a sorting algorithm.
Yeah.
It's called Tim sort.
Yeah, and
But it's beyond, like you don't need to understand that. It's
we
like
cannot, and we don't see what is written there. We are used to for loops, so we are always looking like what is written there. There is nothing, just A minus B. So what does it mean?
it's like C++ code. So if you console log here, it will like, so A and B is 5 and 2, and after that it will take 3 and 5. It's taking reverse. It depends, as she said, on the engine. There is like, if you say sorting algorithms, there's like quick sort, bubble sort, binary search, breadth first, merge sort, insertion sort, selection sort, heap sort, A star. There's so many. There's like so many, but they use Tim sort. But what you should understand is like, if you say
using your function is this mentors. So you should write here min instead of experience.
so you can see here. If so, we compare is less than 0, sort A to index lower than B. If it's 0, return 0, leave A and B unchanged. If you return 0, A and B they will not change. If it's less than 0, A will be before B. If it's higher than 0, B will be before A. So this is what you should do. You should not concern yourself with how the engine works. You should concern yourself with, one day you wrote JavaScript, this is the description of the method. Because they change the sorting method every year. It depends. It depends, because every time there is, they make competition. And every time there's a new algorithm that is faster than it. For example, Tim sort is just 2 years old. Quick sort is like it was used for the last 20 years. But it's just details. You should understand the like how it works and just use it. So if you want to have like ascending order, you say A minus B, and that will return negative. You can even do it with instead of doing this, you say if A is less than B, return -1. If A else if A is more than B, return 1. Else return 0. This is clear. So if A is less than B, you want A to come before B, so you return a negative number. If A is bigger than B, so you want B to be before A, you return a positive number. Otherwise you return 0. And if you want to reverse, you say return 1, return -1, that will be 532. Is it clear a bit? Cool. But it's practice, just practice.
It's so difficult for us to like set up differently.
Yeah.
There's just one line of code that do so many stuff.
Yeah, it's practicing. Do you have any questions? No? So, except this guy. Oh, everything is clear?
You want to make a arrow function of this one?
I already did the arrow function. Means the actual function.
Yeah, and then actually you see this thing like that. This side.
But we have a condition like this one. Is there is some condition? Using some equation.
Yeah, but it returns that. I mean, it returns that. So we don't actually need that. This one also you can remove. So this line
It's just like if 5 is more equal to 6.
types of
Yeah, it's like, it is confusing. It's like,
So you can put this in
I'll try to run this and see if it works. So yeah, this one should also be changed to main course. Yeah, it should be, because we are going to
Guys,
pass the lines of.
do you have any questions?
Okay.
Do you have any questions concerning what we did there?
And this one.
Tree
also
functions,
is
map,
also
filter
mentioned.
for each, and your row functions.
Sorry, it could be 8.
Do you have any questions about this?
Actually, we are giving a variable.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but at least like from if you understand it, but if it doesn't make sense, if something is not
We
clear or
actually
something
giving
like
only the
that.
value. I already tried it, so after that.
Okay, so yeah, that's it for today.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Great fun.
How did I do this?